A forgotten tablet on the edge of the galaxy, there was an old planet covered in black dust and broken stone. The sky above it was dark, and the wind carried the sound of voices long gone. No one lived there anymore, and no stars shone nearby. The planet had once been home to a great race that ruled many systems, but they disappeared many years ago. Many explorers came to this dead world, but found nothing except ruins and empty halls. They left thinking the planet had no secrets to give, but one day a small ship landed quietly near the ancient city ruins. A team of researchers stepped out wearing light suits and scanning gear. They had come not for treasure, but for truth. They believed that something was hidden here, something that could change what was known about the galaxy. Among them was an old man named Aaron who had studied lost civilizations for many years. His hair was gray and his voice quiet, but his eyes still held fire. He walked ahead of the team following a signal that came from deep inside the ground. They moved through broken walls and halls covered in strange carvings. The team reached a large chamber beneath the earth, where a stone table stood at the center. The table was wide, flat, and cold to touch. It was covered in marks that looked like letters, but from no known language. Aaron stepped closer and placed a small device on the surface. The machine blinked and started to read the marks slowly. As the light passed over the carvings, the letters began to form words in a tongue the team could understand. One of the young researchers read the words aloud with a shaking voice. It said, "The ones who come from the blue world shall rise when all others fall. They shall walk with soft feet but carry minds that see beyond stars. They will not be gods, but they will shape gods. They will not seek power, but power will follow them. They shall not be many, but many shall follow them. From them will come both peace and change, and those who fear change will call them danger." Aaron listened without speaking, and his heart beat faster. The blue world. It could only mean one thing: Earth. Old race that left this message had seen something they could not stop. They had watched the stars and seen a path that led to a species not yet known to them. They saw humans. The message went on. Do not fight them, do not run from them, do not try to shape them. They are the ones who shape. Fear them not for their fire, but for their will, for it bends what cannot be bent and breaks what should not be broken. Silence filled the room as the team looked at each other. Some were amazed, some were confused, but one young man at the back stepped forward. His name was Eli, and he said, "If this is true, then it means humans are something special." Aaron nodded slowly and said, "This message is not just a warning, it is a truth, a vision, a memory from minds far older than ours." They took scans of the tablet and left the chamber with careful steps. When they returned to their ship, the data was sent to trusted minds across the galactic network. Most people ignored it and said it was just myth, but a few believed. Among them was a group known for their silence and fear of change. This group met in secret halls on another planet. They watched the message with cold eyes and said, "The time has come." They said the prophecy was not a story, but a threat. They believed humans must be stopped before they rise, but humans had already left their world and stepped into the stars. Their ships were small and not powerful, but their minds were open and fast. They listened, they learned, they helped where they could. They made friends quickly and enemies slowly. The group that feared them started to plan. They did not want to wait. They did not want to see what the prophecy meant when it said humans would shape the future. Back on the ruined planet, Aaron sat near the tablet once more. The rest of the team had gone, but he stayed. He looked at the words again and whispered quietly, "Why did you fear us? What did you see that made you leave this message? And what will happen when others try to stop what you saw?" Far above the dead world, a signal moved through space. It was soft and calm and carried the voice of the tablet across systems, across stars, across cold black. It moved and someone far away heard it. They opened their eyes. They were human, and they smiled because they were not afraid of shaping the future. They were born for it. The arrival, the space near the center of the galaxy was always filled with motion and noise. Ships passed in streams like fish in a great black ocean. Stations floated like small cities with blinking lights and long arms. Every kind of species came there to trade, to speak, to learn, or to spy on One calm day, a small ship entered the zone quietly. It had no sharp weapons, no bright flags, no strong escort. It came from the edge of known space, from a system most had never visited. Its name was Earth, and its people were called humans. The ship docked at a trade station named Vera's Reach. It was an old place where all kinds of travelers stopped. Most ignored the new ship, thinking it was nothing. But those who watched closely began to notice small things. The crew stepped out with calm steps and open hands. They spoke in common words and smiled in ways few others did. They asked questions, listened with care, and helped with simple tasks. One of them fixed a broken cooling pipe without being asked. Another taught a vendor's child how to repair a learning screen. A third sat with a lonely guard and shared a story about oceans and storms. They did not act like visitors, they acted like friends. A few station leaders gathered to talk about them. They said the humans were too quick to learn, too quick to trust. They said no one should learn 4 languages in 1 week. No one should map an unknown passage in 2 days. No one should understand ancient data just by reading it once. But still the humans smiled, worked, laughed, and stayed quiet. They made no loud claims and asked for no power. They only asked to be part of the galactic world. Soon, their names spread across nearby systems. Some said they were soft, some said they were smart, some said they were dangerous, not because of weapons, but because of something deeper. Their will. The group that feared them watched from the shadows. They saw the same signs, the same movements, the same spirit. They remembered the words from the prophecy, not gods, but they shape gods, not many, but many shall follow them. The leader of the group, a tall cold being named Koran, stood before a large screen. He showed images of humans speaking at peace tables where others had failed. He showed how they survived deadly storms on a gas planet with just cloth suits and grit. He showed how they shared water with insect beings who once hunted them. Looked at the council and said, the prophecy has begun. The council members looked at one another, and some began to agree. A vote was called to limit human travel and block their access to key systems. But not all agreed. A few saw something different. They saw hope. One being named Lero, who once served as a builder, spoke in their defense. Lero said he had seen many come and go, but none like the humans. He said they build bridges, not walls. They fix, not break. They ask before they take. He warned the council that fear would bring the wrong kind of future. The vote failed. Humans would remain free to travel back. On Vera's Reach, a young human named Daniel sat near the edge of a window. He looked at the stars and the ships and the endless motion of space. He held a small device in his hand with the ancient prophecy stored in it. He had heard about the discovery on the dead planet and wanted to understand. I'd read the lines again and again. Fear them not for their fire, but for their will. He did not understand why some would fear. That wasn't will, the thing that helped people survive, the thing that helped them rise. His thoughts were broken when a message came. A dispute had broken out between 2 species in the lower hall. He walked there quietly and listened. One group blamed the other for a stolen crate. Voices were rising, hands were moving, blades were showing. Daniel stepped between them and asked a simple question. Do you trust your own memory more than your own future? They paused. He said, if you are right, then the crate is lost. If you are wrong, then the friendship is lost. Which one do you want to lose? The silence that followed was longer than the shouting before it. Later that day, the 2 species shared food in the dining hall. News of this event spread fast. The ones who watched feared more. They said this is how it begins, with small words, with quiet strength, with hands that fix, not fight. Far away, the secret group met again. They said they must act before the humans grow deeper roots. They spoke of plans to discredit them, to spread lies, to create fear where none existed. But deep in the stars, more humans were arriving. They came not with armies but with books, not with orders but with offers. They worked on cold planets to bring warmth. They helped small moons grow food. They shared music and laughter and ways of thinking. Some called them dangerous. Some called them strange, but many began to call them necessary. In one quiet station, an alien child drew a picture of her heroes. There was her mother, there was her teacher, and there was a human who had once helped her fix her broken leg. The prophecy was not just a warning, it was unfolding, and the stars were watching fear takes root. Stars moved slow and quiet, but inside minds across the galaxy, thoughts began to race. The humans had arrived as guests, but now they were becoming something more. They were being trusted, invited, followed, and not all were happy with this. In high towers on cold worlds, old leaders gathered. They had seen empires fall before, not with war, but with ideas, and humans were full of ideas. The group that feared them was growing stronger. They shared clips of humans in council rooms, making suggestions. They showed humans building schools and bridges where no one else had bothered. They twisted these acts and asked questions like, why are they helping so much? What do they want in return? Why do they learn so fast? Some began to believe these whispers, not because they saw danger, but because they feared change. Humans were different. They didn't fit into the old patterns. They didn't wait for orders or follow silent rules. They asked why. They tried again. They stayed when others gave up. On a planet named Erin, a flood destroyed a city near the river. No species had dared rebuild it because the waters rose without warning, but a group of humans came with floating shelters and storm sensors. They worked side by side with locals, and within weeks the city was breathing again. The elders on Erin saw this and sent a message to the council. They said humans had given hope where only silence had lived. But the group in fear twisted the story. They said the humans had come to control the city, to turn it into a seed for their own power. More voices began to question. Was this the rise of the ones from the prophecy? Was this the beginning of what had been feared long ago? In a quiet room, Daniel sat with his datapad. He had been reading reports from different systems. Some spoke with praise, others with concern. But one message caught his eye. It came from Aaron, the old explorer, who had first found the ancient tablet. Aaron said the prophecy had more lines than what had been shared. He had decoded deeper marks in the stone. He wrote that the prophecy had not only warned of humans, it had also warned others. It had warned that those who resist change would bring ruin. That fear would be the spark, not the fire. Daniel closed his eyes and thought of the flood city. He thought of the girl on the station who had drawn him as her hero. He thought of how often he had heard the same words from different voices. You are not like us. You are too fast. You are too brave. And then he smiled softly because he knew that humans were not perfect, but they were. Trying, and trying was a kind of courage. In the shadows, the group of fear made their first move. They released false recordings showing humans speaking of takeover. They used fake symbols and edited faces. They spread the files across 10 systems. In one day on a trade station near the edge of Sector 12, a riot broke out. Humans were blamed for a virus in the air system. They were chased, locked, insulted. They did not fight back. They stayed quiet and left. The leaders of the station later found out the virus was never real. The system had been hacked. The air was clean, but the damage was done. Daniel saw the news and felt the weight in his chest. He called Aaron and said, the prophecy is not the danger. The fear is. Aaron replied with calm words. He said, every great change walks through fire, but only those who keep walking make it through. In a meeting room far from the trade lanes, the council gathered once more. The topic was simple. Should humans be limited in movement and projects? Should they be watched more closely? Should they be warned? Voices rose. Some said no. Some said they had never seen such balance between courage and kindness. But the group of fear had planted seeds, and seeds once planted do not vanish. On their own, Daniel asked to speak. He was not a council member, but he was known. He stood before the voices and said only one thing. We came with hands open. We gave before we asked. We stayed when others ran. If this is what you fear, then maybe it is not us you fear. Maybe it is the change you see in your own reflection. The room fell still after the meeting. One old voice came to Daniel and placed a hand on his shoulder. She said, I once believed the prophecy spoke of doom. Now I wonder if it spoke of hope. Wearing strange clothes, back on the ruined planet where the tablet still lay, the wind blew harder. The dust moved and small carvings showed themselves under the stone. More words lost for years began to glow. They spoke not of war, not of fire, but of light, the light that follows those who choose to shape, not destroy, the light that walks beside those who carry others forward, the light of Willand in the black of space. That light was beginning to spread. Breaking point. The stars had always watched in silence, but now they seemed to lean closer. Whispers filled the corners of every council room, every trading post, every quiet meeting. Humans were no longer seen as visitors. They had become something else, a question that no one could answer with ease. Some said they were the future. Some said they were the storm. Others said they were simply different. But different was not always safe in a galaxy that feared what it could not control. The group of fear now called itself the Circle of Continuance. They believed in old ways, in steady power, in quiet obedience, in controlled growth. To them, humans were a ripple that could become a wave. So the Circle acted. They used code and lies to create shadows behind the humans. They sent false data to news networks. They twisted facts. They created panic on a moon called Elisir. There a power station was brought down, and humans were blamed. The evidence was placed with care. The explosion timed perfectly. The people on Elisir shouted in anger. Shops were closed, streets were filled. Humans were removed from posts and sent away without trial. Daniel saw the footage from Elisir and felt something shift inside him. He sat alone in a dark room holding the tablet that carried the ancient words. He did not speak. He only listened to the quiet sound of a world turning cold. Aaron sent a message from the ruins. He had uncovered more of the prophecy. He said the warning had been left not to stop the humans, but to prepare others for what was coming. Change not made by war, but by will. A shift not of weapons, but of vision. Daniel shared these findings with the council, but many had already turned their ears away. They were afraid of truth because truth did not bend to comfort. It demanded reflection, and reflection often showed fear dressed as logic. The Circle moved again. They placed agents near human camps. They stirred conflict between planets where humans had helped rebuild. They framed a human doctor for spreading illness. They forged messages that made it seem like humans were calling for power. Trust began to break. Friendships weakened. Silence grew where dialogue once lived. But not everywhere. On a cold planet named Juno, humans worked with native builders to make safe homes in the ice. When news of the false charges spread, the natives did not listen to the lies. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. They stood beside the humans and spoke to the networks. They said these people did not come with chains. They came with fire in their hearts and care in their hands. Across the stars, other voices began to rise. Aliens who had been helped, communities who had been healed, scientists who had been taught by humans. They all began to speak. One voice from a desert world said, I was blind until I met them. They did not open my eyes, they taught me to open them myself. But even as truth spread, the Circle pushed harder. They gathered warships in secret. They spoke of safety. They told their allies that humans would take over if not stop. The galaxy stood at the edge. The air was still, the silence deep. Daniel was called to speak one last time before the Grand Council. He walked into the hall not with guards or banners, but with one small item. He placed the ancient tablet on the center stone, and he read the final part of the prophecy that had been buried. Voice that read the stars had written these words: the ones you fear are the ones who will give you the future you could never reach, not because they are better, but because they choose to rise even when it is easier to fall. The hall was quiet. Some lowered their eyes, some closed their hands. But some began to understand. Daniel looked at them and spoke softly. We are not here to rule. We are not here to replace. We are here to walk, to build, to share, to shape with you, not without you. One of the oldest council members stood slowly. He had once voted to block human travel. He now looked around the room and said, fear made us forget who we were, but they reminded us with every action, with every hand held out, with every wall they helped tear down. At that moment, a report came. The Circle had launched ships toward Earth's outer colonies. The war they had tried to avoid was now at the door. Daniel looked at the council, no fear in his voice, only strength. He said, we do not ask for your armies. We ask for your truth. Will you stand with lies, or will you walk with us? Choice was now clear, and the stars waited. For an answer, a new dawn. The Circle's ships moved fast across the dark lanes of space. Their lights cold, their message louder than any weapon. They wanted fear to lead and silence to follow. They wanted the future to bow before it could rise, but not all ships in the sky followed the same command. Some ships turned away before the attack. Some captains refused to fire. Some planets closed their gates to the Circle, and others opened them to humans. In the Earth colony of Grey Wind, alarms rang. But panic did not rise. The people there were ready, not with guns, not with hate, but with belief. They had planted food for 3 worlds, built schools on frozen ground, helped creatures who once feared them. They stood with open arms, and the first wave of ships stopped just outside the orbit. No shots, no orders, just silence. A message came through. It was not from the Circle. It was from one of their pilots. He said, "I was told you were a threat, but I see children in your streets and stories, in your voices, and I will not fire." His voice broke the wall the Circle had built. His words became a call across space. Other pilots began to question. Other officers looked at their screens and saw not enemies but people. A fleet built from fear began to break apart. Meanwhile, on the central world of the Council, thousands gathered. A giant screen showed what was happening above Grey Wind. Daniel stood in the middle of the crowd. He did not speak right away. He waited. Then came a new signal, alive. Feed from the deep ruins where Aaron had stayed. He had uncovered the final line of the ancient prophecy. It said, "Those who walk with will not against. Those who lift not push. Those who light not blind shall lead all toward the dawn." These words spread fast across every system. People played in Hall ships' homes. They listened and they chose. The Circle tried one last move. They called their allies to strike one human station as a warning. But their own forces now stood silent and in many corners. Those who had followed them stepped back and removed their symbols on Grey Wind. Daniel spoke to the stars. He said, "You feared us because we are new, because we do not kneel where no truth lives, because we break walls not for war, but for windows. We came not to rule, but to walk beside. We came not as heroes, but as learners." One by one, leaders of other worlds sent words of peace. They said we were blind, but now we see. They said we were deaf, but now we hear. A full meeting of the Grand Council was called, the largest in centuries. No walls, no barriers, all voices welcome. The vote came quietly. Should humans be given full rights across all systems? Should they be offered a seat not at the edge but at the core? The result was clear. Every vote but one said yes. The Circle faded. Its name no longer carried fear. Its halls empty. Its lies cracked. Daniel walked once more into the ancient ruin. He placed the old tablet where it had been found, this time not as a warning, but as a memory. He whispered to the silent stones, "We were not the end. We were the beginning you did not expect." Above him, a new ship was being built, its name chosen by voices from many worlds. Not a weapon, not a fortress, but a bridge. The ship was shaped by humans, but touched by hundreds of hands. It carried no flag, only a name carved in light. Unity. Children from 5 planets sang its name in different tongues. Old beings who once feared now smiled in quiet streets. Markets grew wide with voices from every system. New maps were drawn not with borders, but with paths. The stars did not look so distant anymore. Daniel stood in the hangar and looked at the ship. He saw not victory, he saw hope. He saw hands joined where once fists were raised, and in the sky above the words of the prophecy faded from warning into history, not as fear, but as truth. Humans had not come to conquer, they had come to connect. Fire that burned in them was not for war, it was for warmth, and across the galaxy, a new dawn rose, one not born from power, but from will. And the stars, for the first time in 1,000 years, smiled back the end.